Okay, here we are. So, as I was saying before this recording, I thought it would be fun today to talk about how we train.
Yeah.
How we train the way we do, because as we've discussed before a few times, I think although we're good friends, we share bodybuilding, views and information, but we do train differently. And I think everybody wants to know, like, how do you train? What do you do? What's your split? Blah 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 blah. So people never get tired of hearing about this. So maybe we can.
No, for sure. I've certainly run the gamut in terms of training absolutely everything. But
yeah,
very interesting indeed, because I know that you train with a very different style to me. It's pretty cool.
Let me kick off with how I train, just because, like you said, you did the gamut, and I have been at this game for 40 years this year. So I've trained pretty much every way there is to train, pretty much, and I've kind of found what works for me, and you found what works for you. So I'll just start with what works for me as of now. So for people who are listening who don't know, I turned 55 in a few months. So I've been at this for a while. I'm a bit on the older side for a bodybuilder, but yet I still believe in training very hard. And how I train is what I would call a modified DC or dog crap program. People don't know it's very high intensity, relatively low volume, high frequency. And so what I do is I train basically on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And again, at my age, I find that's a good interval of activity and rest. I can recover and hit things very hard. I'm in the gym for roughly 90 minutes per session. My body is split in 2 sessions. So the first session is chest, back, and shoulders. And the second session is legs and arms. I do that way because it just works for me flow-wise. I put my arms separate because my arms have always sucked. So I do give them kind of a little more attention by having their own day, and maybe they get a little more stimulation by getting hit twice per rotation. And training Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it's like A, B, A, Friday, back again to B again on Monday. So theoretically, you're training everything twice every 8 days. So for me, that's pretty good frequency. The volume I do, because volume is a big discussion. We talked about volume before. Is what I'd like to do is, so I start with chest. What I'll do is I'll do usually incline Smith or some kind of machine press. And that will be 3 to 4 warm-up sets. The first set will be around 20 reps just to make sure that I'm warm. Then I drop to 12 reps. Then I drop maybe to 6, then maybe 4. And then I go for my real working set. My working set will be a DC style rest pause. I will try to have a weight that I fail no less than 10 reps for safety reasons. Any heavier than that, I think I'm just getting risky with ligaments and tendons at my age. Could pop something. Don't want to do that. Sometimes I don't make 10 reps because I've raised the weight or something, challenge myself, and I'll work back up there. But I'll do the 10 reps. I'll fail. 15 deep breaths, which works up to 20, 25 seconds. Do 2, 3 more reps, fail, and then repeat again a third time. So fail again. So 10 reps, force rest pause. And then I might go ahead and do a back off set next. For me, a back off set is I just take it back down to where the weights were in the previous set, which was like the full rep set, and just bang out as many as I can. That might be 8 to 10 reps on that. And then for me, I'll go into an isolation chest exercise, which is usually a machine fly, could be cable fly. And that I'll do straight sets for the most part, to failure. Each set roughly to failure. The last one definitely to complete failure. Like I cannot move at all without breaking form. And that for me, people have different definitions of what failure is, but failure for me is you cannot move it at all, no matter how hard you try, no matter how deep you dig, without breaking form. They just don't break form. Keep it there. Don't bring in any other muscles because that's kind of pointless. And I'll do like 3 sets of that. The last set I might go and do like another rest pause just to put some icing on the cake and maybe an extreme stretch as well. Again, going back to DC because I just like the way that feels. It feels good. And that would be it for chest for me. And then I go into back, and I would do like a pull down movement, a row movement, and then another kind of secondary row movement or pull down movement. Just get different parts of the back done the same way as I mentioned at chest. And then shoulders would be like a pressing movement, and then a lateral movement, and then some rear delts, perhaps to polish it off. So really low volume, high intensity, in and out pretty quick. And The next day for legs and arms, my legs are in rough shape because I did have a bilateral quadricep rupture a couple of years ago, so I'm not optimal. I don't do squats because it's scary. I also have diastasis recti, so I have to be careful about putting pressure on the abdomen, so I also don't do it. But I do I start with hamstrings, like many of us do, for safety. Thank you, John Meadows. Leg curls, leg extensions. Then I move into machine leg press, machine being like a plate loaded leg press, and then a machine leg press to finish off without risk. I do calf presses there because I'm lazy. I don't want to move. I go actually do remaining RDLs, to finish that off. And then arms is really simple. Straight sets on arms. I don't do force reps. I try to get 12 to 15 reps per set. I try to fail every set because I think that the stress put on the muscle's so small, it can recover even if you go all out each set for 3 sets of 2 exercises, 6 sets total for bis, 6 sets for tris. And that's pretty much it. Again, very low volume. I've done many different things before. I did 6 days a week, Arnold Schwarzenegger system when I was 16, 17 years old. I find I don't have the attention to keep training for a long time one muscle part, one body part. Some people do. I think you might do like one body part per session. Me, I just can't. I want to do something else. I'm tired of doing whatever, especially if it's arms. I get really bored. I want to do something else. So 3 muscles, 2 muscles per session, it's just right for my attention span. And I feel I can go all out that small amount of time, just give it everything I have and just get done and move to the next thing. Because if I feel, for me, if I stretch it out more sets, the first few sets I know are not counting so much because I'm not really working until the last sets. So I just get rid of that stuff, make sure I'm warmed up and just go out at the end. And that gets me in and out of the gym pretty quick. I think for me, the higher frequency, the A-B split, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday gives me, works out well for my recovery abilities too. And with that system, frankly, when I decided to compete again in 2018, mid-40s, I put on probably a good 10 kilograms of muscle doing that. So, you could argue it's probably a good balance of stimulation, recovery, even at an advanced age. That definitely, I've tried a few things. I've done higher volume. I've done the bro split, 1 day a week per body part. Just found that just boring. I did mention to you, Craig, before, in my earlier days when I wanted to become pro in the early 90s, I did twice a day bro split. So, go to the gym in the morning, come home, go back to the gym at night, repeat 6 days a week. It was all about training, eating, because in the 90s, it was all about more of everything, more training volume, more food volume, sleep as much as you can, everything as much as you can. And that worked, but it wasn't optimal, I think, for me. So, I'm at the DC type stuff, which I like because it's short, it's intense, it keeps me focused. I like the logging of everything because I like in everything I do a clear progression path that I can see and I can measure. I'm not hard and fast about this, but I do believe there's some wisdom to the adage: if you can't measure it, you can't progress it. So that works for me. I use an app on my phone to track my top lifts every time, and then go back and compare and try to advance a rep, try to advance the smallest plate if I can. Some days I can't, of course, and that's okay. I consider myself kind of advanced because of the time I've been doing this. I'm already probably big enough at my age that I can't expect too much progress, but I do try. And I think this system works for me. I enjoy it. I know some people don't, but it definitely works for me, and I advocate it because it's efficient. And it keeps people focused and gives them a purpose, because of the logging. So that's largely where I'm at. I don't know if you want to challenge that or ask questions about it, or do you want to dump into yours? Or
well, I think so there's a few things that I kind of picked up on that that I think we share, which is interesting, and that is the fact that you work out the way that you enjoy it. Because I think that regardless of what some science says or what anyone says from an experiential basis
Mm.
in terms of what is optimal. And that's another word that you used there. I think that is something that is slightly less optimal, but you enjoy doing and you get fired up about.
Mm.
And it makes you, like, when I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about my next training session.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even it usually kicks in about dinner time, right? Because I train in the morning.
Yeah.
And around about dinner time, I start getting excited about my next day's workout.
Mm-hmm.
And like, just, what I'm going to train, and I'm imagining what it's going to feel like, and, all this kind of stuff, right? And like, when I go to bed, I'm like, oh, I just want to get to sleep and get up so I can go train, right? So,
yeah.
I think that when you find a system that works for you like that, that is going to have a far better result than something that you are doing because it's optimal and you're not as, like, quote unquote optimal.
Yeah.
And not fired up about
You're not engaged.
Yeah. So to me, that's like the main thing.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I think we hold that, common, right? Because
like core tenet.
You're equally passionate about the way that you train as I am about the way I train.
Yeah.
That said, that's probably about where the similarities end. So the way that I'm training now is kind of, it's based, well, I mean, it's a bro split. I do a day for chest, a day for back, a day for shoulders, a day for legs, and a day for arms. And the rotation that I do those on is I do legs and then arms, because normally after my leg day, I'm pretty trashed. So arms is a little bit easier.
Yep.
And also, arms is something everybody loves, right? So it's like, after you've had leg day, even if you're trashed, you want to go train arms, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll usually
I just want to touch on that. Like, maybe because my arms are not very good, or maybe vice versa. I don't enjoy training arms, never have. It's always been
really
boring. I want to train big stuff like back or chest. That's always where my mind's been.
Right.
And arms bore me, but my arms are not my standout body part.
Yeah.
Is that because I don't love training them, or is it vice versa? I don't
know. But yeah, like, my mentality for that was just simply that my arms suck. So I have very long limbs, right? So I have very long legs and very long arms and a short torso. So training the limbs is really important for me.
Yeah.
And I think that by prioritizing them and having their own day for both arms and legs, is just something that I need to do. Yeah, something I need to do. So I'll have those, and then I will have chest day, a back day, and then a shoulder day. Just because, like, the reason I set it up like that is because you tend to get a bit of shoulders on chest day, so I'll make sure that And then one of the things that the judges have asked me to work on is my hamstrings. So, generally, I will throw on a set of, like, stiff-legged deadlifts or something on back day. Yeah. Of course, trying not to engage the back that much, but if some sort of secondary, knock on into the back happens, then obviously it's back day, so it doesn't, matter so much, right? But yeah, that's the general thing. So it's very specific to me, the way that I have that set up. That's because I designed it, and it's for me. So But the way that I train is so I call it a very high density workout. Where basically I like doing a lot of supersets. And so, and they don't necessarily need to be a compound and an isolation superset. Even with my compound lifts, when I'm training a body part specifically, I am trying to contract and use the target muscle to the extent possible without recruiting anything else. So I am the type of guy that will go in and use 50-pound dumbbells on a dumbbell press. And not, even though I can push way more if I recruit a lot more. If I focus exclusively on trying to fire the pecs,
Mm-hmm.
then using the much lighter weight actually allows me to do that.
Yeah.
So I get right into my head on all of these things, and I will really search for that mind muscle connection, you know, to an extreme, really, and just focus on trying to, you know, like contract and relax that muscle in order to drive the movements. The repetition range will generally be higher. I'm looking at sort of 15 to 20 type reps.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes even more.
Mm.
And the reason why I like doing that is because I like having those. I like having those mentally challenging reps where you're like, you have the voice in your head saying, "Come on, one more."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, for example, like when you're doing a 21 rep set, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are like 21, not so many, but I love it because you count off the first 10, and those don't really hurt that much.
Yeah.
But then things start to get a little bit sticky.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think Arnold was the one that said, you know, the way that you do, the way that you're supposed to train is you go, and then when it starts hurting, then you count and get 10 reps. Right?
Yeah.
And this is actually kind of pretty close to that, where it's like
reps, right?
I'll go through the 10 reps, and then things are starting to, you know, I'm starting to feel it. And then I count 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I count 5. Then once I get the 5 done, then I'm like, okay, 3 more, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the 3 more. And then after I get 3, then I go, come on, man, 2 more. In my head, right? This is my self-talk. And I get the 2 more, and then I'm like, come on, man, 1 more, right? And I get that. And that's 21 reps.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so, but it gives me these like milestones that are progressively shorter to strive for. And I find that really allows me to let the beast run wild, and really push myself as hard as I possibly can. That's the way that I like to do it, while also maintaining the focus, you know, without like breaking form or whatever. If I'm in if I'm in like a smaller rep range, I find that my form tends to get sacrificed faster.
Interesting.
I'm the type of person that wants to get that extra rep, and because, you know, I wind up sacrificing the form, and that puts me in danger of injuries.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So this method works. So like an example of structure, in terms of like the way that, like the sort of exercise I would do is I would do something like, so let's go with chest day as an example. I would start with like incline Smith, right? Yeah. I would do, you know, say 20 reps on that. And then I would go immediately over to the dumbbells, and I would do flat dumbbell press.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would do the same thing there, 15, 20 reps there. And I would do probably like 3 sets, 2 or 3 sets in that sort of rep range, just depending on how things are feeling. Then I would go to another pairing after that. And my go-to for that usually is machine press, which is like a, you know, like a seated machine press, converging chest press actually is what it is. Do that, and then I would do that with superset with a pec deck. Where on the pec deck, it's again, I'm just trying to focus exclusively on recruiting the pecs, keeping the sternum up, etc., etc. So that would be the second pairing. Then after that, I would do something like, so we have hammer strength incline and decline press. I would go and I would do those 2, because I find that I can hit the incline press, and that feels really good, and I feel full. But then when I go do the decline after that, I really feel like I can I really feel full and like kind of rounded, because it's hitting a different angle. I guess it's not that dissimilar to what Milos is always preaching with his giant sets, right? Like, so from different angles, you know, you're recruiting different fibers, and, you know, therefore, you know, there's benefits to that.
Yeah.
So that's the type of thing that I would do. So that's like 6 movements, right?
That's a lot.
So 6 movements, that's 6 movements, and they're done in pairs. So, you know, I'll go in there, and it's like, you know, as I said, because those pairs are the way they are, it's like you hit it, and then you hit the next exercise, and then you take your minute or whatever, but then you're back at it again. Like it is meant to be done at a high pace.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting around for 3 minutes in between sets.
No. Yeah. No. I don't.
Like hit the next exercise, give yourself a little bit of time to recover, hit it, next exercise, da da da.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's 6 movements, I'll get that done in less than 60 minutes. And then that way, that allows me to do the endless hours of cardio that I have to do after and still be out at a reasonable time. But yeah, so that's another thing that I really like about this style, is that particularly in the prep context, and actually I like cardio even in the off season now. I've really changed my tune on that. Yeah, just like being able to get the lifting portion done in about an hour, and flip into some cardio for, I don't know, 20 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes in off season, and then we're like, half hour, 35 minutes now.
Yeah.
I like that. It feels very, and also because it's like high paced, it's I feel like there's no wasted time.
Yeah. It sounds like to me, if I understood correctly, you're doing supersets with about 1 minute break in between the supersets.
I would say ish, yeah, like
exercise, 1 minute, exercise,
yeah.
1 minute.
Catch my breath and then
yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I've always I will say I trained like that before, and I'm not saying that because like I graduated from or anything, but just wasn't ideal for me, probably for different reasons. I think part of it might be due to the fact that I have really bad asthma.
Yeah.
So my stamina fades.
Yeah.
That could be kind of subconsciously having me point a different direction. But yeah, I definitely train like that, like in the 90s, a lot of supersetting, higher volume, always kept rests short, 60 seconds, 30 seconds on arms, not supersetting would be a minute, because you need to catch your breath. I never understood, frankly, people who take long rests in between sets, like 2 minutes. I mean, if you're squatting super heavy, you have to breathe, right?
Yeah.
A little different, but
I don't know, if you're going for like sort of lower rep range, very like lower rep range, constantly testing your maxes type of thing, like training to failure every single set. Like I think that you do need the time there, right?
Yeah.
If I was doing like a set of 8, 6, 8, something like that, and I was failing, like close to failure, then there's just no question I would probably need 2 to 3 minutes to recover from that.
Yeah, I think I don't allow myself that much because it's just my style. I don't know if it's a good thing to do or not, but I still keep it probably about a minute between my sets. And this, but just for anybody else who's listening, like the way I approach those heavy sets I talked about, like obviously the 20 rep warm-up set is really nothing.
Yeah.
But then I'll go to like 10 or 12, then 8 or 6, and then down to 4, and then go into the working set. I'm not going completely to failure on that 6 and then the 4 sets. I'm increasing the weight substantially, but it's really to acclimate myself to, okay, the big weights are coming. This is kind of what it feels like. Get ready, get set, get everything kind of in place and ready to tackle that big weight psychologically and physically. So I do that 4 rep set before the really heavy one, and I can probably do 8, definitely 6, but I'm not going to try because I want to save my energy for that big set.
Yep.
And that's, again, like this, but not everybody knows this. That's why I do it. That's kind of a hybrid of what Dante teaches and Jordan Peters does as well. And just to me, it makes a lot of sense and works for me. That's why I do it. I found like not only stamina wise, I couldn't keep up, but just attention wise, maybe I have ADD or something, but I can't.
I actually do. But that's what style works for.
It works for you somehow.
Yeah. Because it's like, boom, 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 the whole way, right? And
you can stay in the same body part for an hour, which I don't think I can do that.
Well, but 6 different exercises, right? So
yeah.
And also they're like back to back, so it's kind of like there's no time to think. It's like you hit the one set, and then you hit the superset component, and then you take a short break, and then you hit it again, and it's just you're constantly bashing yourself. So it's there are times when you sit there and you go, like, oh shit, I'm tired, but I have to do this. And then you have the conversation with yourself and get yourself back into it. But headphones on and just crank away. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned about like kind of segmenting your sets. Like I got 3 more reps, I got 2 more reps, that kind of self-talk. I do remember doing that when I was doing high rep sets, and I got that. I think, I don't know if I read about it in the magazines or whatever, but I remember I trained with an old pro from Massachusetts. He was a big guy back in the 90s, Mike Quinn. He did a seminar, and I went to his seminar. He trained me and put some things in my head, that self-talk was one of the things. And I kind of,
well, there's actually been scientific research that has lent support to the idea that is effective. So
yeah, I think so.
And interestingly, third person self-talk is better than first or second. So you don't want to be, I got this. You got to be like, come on, Craig, you got this.
You got this.
Yeah. So it's like someone has to be yelling at you inside your head. So, and that's like, yeah, I mean, I love that. And sometimes I actually verbalize it. So it's, that's maybe a little bit, if someone were to see that, perhaps it would be embarrassing. But
give you some notoriety in the gym.
No, why is this guy talking to himself? Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone's doing it inside their head, right? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Why you do it outside your head?
Okay. Yeah. No. But yeah, it has been shown to be beneficial in a strength training environment. So yeah, so I thought that may as well use it. So the 2 things actually that I use mentally are music and self-talk.
Yeah.
There's also been a breadth of scientific research that has shown that if you're listening to music while you're training, as long as it's music that you personally like, so this is almost like training style, right? But as long as it's music, whatever it is that gets you fired up, whether it be classical, jazz, or like EDM or metal or whatever it is, right? Like that will actually help you lift better. So, I'm going to use all those things that I can. And
I find that true myself, because obviously in the older days, the music in the gym was wherever the music was in the gym.
Yep.
I mean, if you didn't have wireless stuff,
definitely
not. But fortunately, I always played metal or something like that in gyms I went to. I mean, the last big gym I went to in the States was a very hardcore gym that had like craters in the floor from the 180 dumbbells being thrown and stuff like that. And it was just left that way because it was kind of cool. So they always had cool music, but music definitely very important. We've talked about music before. We have similar tastes in some music, but I think we listen to different things in the gym. I listen to metal, usually older stuff. I like Slayer. I like stuff like that I kind of grew up with. I listen to German stuff like Rammstein, Icebreaker, because it has a good feel for me. It paces good, but also because I don't understand German. I never fixate on the words. It's all about the sound for me. It's all about the pace. And that's probably because I'm a naturally, I mean, you probably don't know this about me that much, but I'm actually a very non-aggressive person. I'm really, really, one of my friends used to tell me, like, if I was any more chill, I'd be dead. I would joke about it because, the things we do in bodybuilding sometimes make people angry. And that never happens to me. I just don't get that way. So the metal helps to push me to become more aggressive and not tempered, but a little fiery in the gym. I kind of need that, frankly speaking. So I use the music to motivate, and I'm a big visualizer, seeing myself having completed the lifts before time. And I also visualize other people sometimes. Like I have a thing for Levroni's line about I'm big because I'm strong. Back in Maryland, that'll kick in, especially if I'm pressing something that's particularly heavy. Some kind of imagery, either myself completed or somebody else who has completed something similar will show me the path there. My body will follow. That works for me. I don't know if you visualize it or not, if you need it or not. Maybe you don't. Maybe the self-talk is.
Interestingly, when I've tried to visualize in the past, I actually wind up psyching myself out.
Really?
Yeah. I go, oh shit, I've never lifted this before. And I can sit there and try to fake it and be like, oh yeah, I can see myself doing this. But then at the end of the day, inside my head's like, no, fuck you. Right. And then sure enough, when I go and I try to perform, then I also found that like if it's kind of a common theme in my life, but if my expectations and my actual performance, if there's a big gap between the two, then I get very frustrated, not in a good way. So, yeah, so that's actually something that I try not to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I try to just, as I said, like get into the muscle and get into the movement. And I try not to have a very prescribed end in terms of, I don't know if I'm going to do 15 reps or 20. I'm going to pick the weight up. I'm going to get inside as much as I can. And my natural tendency is to go to failure anyways. So, and I still remember with Chris Cormier, I was getting him to help me with some training stuff. And he, he said to me, he was like, well, Lee Haney always used to say, stimulate, don't annihilate. He goes, but I can tell looking at you that you're an annihilator. And I am. And so just knowing that, I kind of, I'm trying to work with that as opposed to, because I think that I have that tendency to overwork. So I'm trying to find ways that I can still scratch that itch, but not go overboard. And so it can kind of, if I get into the muscle and I just keep going, like I remember it was actually Michaela Aycock. I don't know if you've followed her before.
You've mentioned her to me before, yeah.
But yeah, she, I remember her, like I asked her what goes on in her head when she's training for this exact reason. And she was like, well, basically, when you're training, you don't stop when your mind says stop. You train when your body says stop. Yeah. And so that was like, because she's kind of the view that like, and if you've ever seen her train, holy shit. But it's like, she's of the view that, you always have more than you think you do. And sometimes you might be getting all these signals saying that you need to stop and you don't have another rep, but in actual fact you do. So, but you can't know unless you're in that moment.
Unless you have the experience of knowing yourself, really. There's a lot of sense in that, because I think, especially if you haven't been doing it for a very long time, I'll consider myself a very long time, your mind will prevent your body from hurting itself. It will come in and try to stop you before you go to a point where you can cause real damage. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, And maybe after, I've been doing this for 40 years this year. I started at 15, I'm 55. I may be deluding myself, but I feel I know where that point is very clearly at this point in my life. Like I know when I sit down, I have a very good expectation of how many reps I'm going to get exactly with this weight, even if it's a new weight. And I hit that target. I very rarely miss it. I might fail it because I didn't eat properly or I didn't sleep optimally the night before, something like that. But usually I'm pretty on target. I do, again, maybe delusion, but I think I'm going to complete failure and then beyond with the forced reps. I think I've got that pretty well nailed. But I think that's very, very, very hard to define, and very hard to know if it's your mind shutting you down before your body, as you say. It's very hard to pick that out without a lot of experience.
If I were to estimate whether my mental toughness is greater than my physical toughness or vice versa, I am 100% certain that the mental element is much more there. And that's how I've been able to injure myself so much.
I'm gonna say, but I let you say it.
and all of these things, right? Like in terms of being a bit of a psycho in the gym, right? So that mental component, for me, my challenge is more, how do I manage that, and how do I how can I still release that, how can I use that to my advantage as opposed to my detriment, right? Because it is a very double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like, if you're one of those guys in MMA that never taps, right? Like
you get wrecked.
You're gonna get choked out, you're gonna get wrecked, you're gonna have torn ligaments and tendons and all that sort of stuff. Why? Because you're too stubborn, right? And your mind is just like, and so I think that I think that that's probably my way of trying to manage that. that tendency.
And do you feel that you're certainly higher volume than myself, higher rep range than myself helps you mitigate that risk?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because on the lower rep stuff, as I'm saying, like eventually it will come down to sacrificing form.
Right.
And if it comes down to sacrificing form, like form degradation isn't something where like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was a shit rep, right? You know what I mean? Unless you're going like way beyond.
Yeah.
Like, you're just going sort of like a little bit further than you're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
Like consistently over time. Yeah. And eventually you're going to wind up like wearing down ligaments and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with my rotators.
Yeah. I think if you're well locked in, you're executing properly, your chances of injury are much lower. And people will and I say it's people who are not experienced with training, it's like your body will do what it has to do to move the weight that it thinks it must do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I tell people, like you mentioned earlier, like really focus on the muscle you're training. Like, why am I in this exercise? Mm-hmm. What am I supposed to do here? Just focus on that muscle. Because when you think about just moving the bar from here to there, mm-hmm. your body will do whatever it takes to go from here to there.
Yeah.
Which means this muscle, this angle, that angle, and then injury and lost productivity as well, being very suboptimal and wondering why you're not improving after 2 years of lifting like a monkey.
No, I had a conversation with a younger guy earlier this week where, he shot me a video of him doing dumbbell press, mm-hmm. my dumbbell press. And as he's doing it, like his, it was just too much weight, right? Like, you could see like, when he's trying to get when he's hoisting the weights up to lift, like it was unstable at the bottom. And then, he's got a bit of a shake going as and I was just like, put those weights down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are not strong enough for that. Yes, you can move them. I saw that you got 6 reps, but like if you saw somebody lifting like this in the gym,
mm-hmm.
if you just walked up and saw somebody execute exactly the same set that you just did, what would you think?
Yeah. Step outside.
You'd be like, dude, lower the weight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, don't do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And and it's just like I told him my message to him was that, you have to earn the weight.
Yeah.
You have to earn the weight that you're using.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're, and again, I love going back to the whole like Jay Cutler prepped for Olympias using no more than 100-pound dumbbells.
Mm.
And of course that's very nuanced because we all know Jay can do more than that. But still, the point is, if you're focusing on the contractions and focusing on all of the technique and everything, then 100 pounds is enough for anyone.
Yeah, it can be.
That's the message that you take out. Like as bodybuilders, we try to make things harder, not more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean stupid. Like we're not standing on a Bozu ball on one foot and trying to do dumbbell curls, but to ensure that we're taxing the muscle that we're targeting maximally.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we're striving to achieve all the time, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make the lift easy.
Right. In some ways, trying to make it harder, like you say. And I'm sure you've said this to people too before, but I tell people like the muscle has no idea of how much weight's in your hand.
Yeah.
It doesn't care. It's about how much load you're putting on that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start distributing that load to other muscles and other joints just to move it,
mm-hmm.
losing the purpose of the exercise, and you're not becoming efficient, and you're not going to get the gains you want. So stepping the weight down
mm-hmm.
might be a bit of a ding to your ego.
Yeah,
it will get you better progress, and it really will, because your muscle doesn't care. It doesn't know. It's like how much stress is being applied.
I always like to call it the pink dumbbell team. So I'm a proud member of Team Pink Dumbbells. So that's
sure.
Yeah. But I mean, still like when I see myself execute, like for example, like so my favorite one is shoulder, like is dumbbell laterals, right? Like everyone that doesn't know how to lift picks up way too much, like all the time, and they've got their arms bent at like 45 degrees, and it looks like they're doing the chicken dance with like, and it's just like, you're not getting anything on your belts, right? Like drop down to like, 4 or 5 kilos, right? And straighten your arms all the way out, and don't use your traps, and don't use, like excessive body English,
mm-hmm.
and and stretch them out as far as you can instead of trying to lift them up, and let's see how many reps you actually get. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I think laterals is a great one because, like you say, angle of the elbow makes a huge difference, and people bring it in too much and just try to go for the weight. But that's a good exercise where I call back to something Dorian Yates said about if you can't stop the weight mid-movement and hold it there, you don't control it, and that means you're not doing it properly. So laterals, very easy to find out. You pick up that 20-pound dumbbell, and you hold up, you can't stop it middle and hold it there. It's too heavy for you.
You
know, that's a very, very easy exercise to figure that out and just get a mental self-check. And I don't go super. I have gone heavy. I mean, I'll admit I've done 80-pound dumbbell laterals before, single arm. I kept it reasonably controlled. I could and then lower it down. Not the perfect form, but I did it. But I prefer, generally speaking, to be around the 40-pound, 30 to 40-pound range. That's where I like to be. And that I can stop it and I can hold it for a good 5 seconds out there, at whatever point you ask me to. If I couldn't, I would lower the weight and grab a different weight. But I just genetically born with reasonably strong shoulders. I was doing 315 behind the neck easy when I was like 18 years old.
Wow.
So that's, maybe it's not a good example, but the point is, like, whatever the weight is, can you hold it there? Can you master it? Can you own it?
Yeah.
And then you're gonna build muscle with that, not just use momentum, to move the weight.
No, it's a huge difference. So
yeah.
But yeah, I especially find that with my delicate frame, that long-limbed, short-torsoed frame, that this sort of thing in particular is extremely important.
Yeah. I don't know if that your frame structure has contributed to your injuries or not.
I think the combination of this, the structure as well as the brain problem. That's probably the two main contributing factors there. It's like, no, I want to be 300 pounds. So
yeah. I think I don't know for sure, but I think your background must be English.
Yes,
right? Yeah. Okay, so 100% English. So yeah. So I'm slightly less than half English. My father's side is mostly from England, and Scottish. So there's some big guys in Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland.
Yeah, but my mother's side is 100% Sicilian.
Yeah.
So we're about the same height, but I've got probably longer arms than you and maybe shorter legs.
Yeah.
Like big rocks, Sicilians. Yeah. And that structure, I guess, has served me okay for injury prevention for most of my career. My quad rupture was pure stupidity and not about training wrong. It was just a moment of ineptitude mentally that got me in trouble.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, especially for if you've been doing it for a long time, that sometimes it can be easy to forget how dangerous it is, what we're doing and the types of weights that we move. So
yeah, excellent point. The type of weights we move, I guess that's a good place to kind of come full circle too, is that shows again we do train very different ways. We probably use different weights, but we both love how we train. It's effective for us. So I mean, when you said that too, I'll go off for a second here, but just I remember an interview with Jordan Peters once, and everybody knows Jordan Peters trains like a fucking animal. The way he pushes and how intense he is. But he was asked once on a podcast, like, if you found that training a different way, like a bro split, would get you bigger and get you a pro card, would you change? He said no, because I love training this way. And I can understand that. I definitely can understand that. Sometimes you love the training more than.
Well, I think that I think that the stuff that's been popularized over the years is different as well, right? Because back in the day, it was very much chase the pump.
Oh yeah.
And then you have all the dorks coming out saying, "Oh, that's metabolites. It's not necessarily muscle growth." Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah. Go back to your lab. But yeah, and then you have the same guys saying, "Oh, well, it's actually all about volume."
Yeah. We're talking about that, right?
Which isn't there, Mr. Science? Right? So it's like I think that at the end of the day, it was like a lot more popular to do sort of the high rep, high volume type style. In the before Dorian, basically. And then after Dorian, it was all HIT And then after that, like this top set, back off set thing has been very popular recently. I think that's kind of Jordan Peters has been one of the main advocates of that, and then also Matt Jansen and his guys. And yeah, I mean, it's a very they're both very like, I think that's especially when it's that sort of top set, back off set coupled with higher volume isolation work after. I think that's very, very good, but it's I blow myself up on it. So
yeah. So you got to find out what your limitations are and what suits you. And it's the old adage, you got to listen to your body a little bit. I don't mean listen to your body to find an excuse to not train hard, but pay attention if you're doing something that's not in your best interests.
Well, like another thing too is like, take progress pictures and videos.
What's
working for you, what isn't. Like, because the thing is I can sit there till I'm blue in the face saying, oh yeah, lift big, get big, that sort of stuff. But I tell you, my body looks the best when I'm doing high volume.
Yeah.
Not even, I mean, this last show was like, that was just a real testament to it. So, it's I mean, you can actually see when things are kind of firing correctly for you. And it doesn't matter what scientific survey says. Like, science is a great place to start, but it's not necessarily correct. And it's not necessarily correct in all circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a multitude of factors, right? There's, like, as I said, like there's everything from structure to, that sort of mentality versus physicality type thing. There's like a whole host of things that can affect this one way or the other. So
and if I can, I think we touched on it in the volume discussion, but I think that a lot of the science to me boils down to all the studies I'm seeing boil down to one thing, and it's about being as effective as you can in the gym to stimulate muscle. And for some people, maybe that takes a lot of volume to find those reps that really get them there. And that's why they're saying 10 to 20 sets of volume. And that's why I'm saying train this way and that way, because that's what people need to find those reps that actually give them the force to adapt to this. If you can be more efficient at finding those reps because you're more experienced, you found then you don't need to do all that. And that's not really proving the science wrong, but it's just why are we doing the science? What's the point? What are we after? What are we trying to learn? Keep that in mind rather than the study itself is a thing.
No, that's an interesting point, because like certainly in my case, it's when I get to those reps at the end of a high rep set, those are the ones where I'm going, I've got to get these now, right? And I am not stopping, because it's that old thing, like these are the reps that count. But it's just, if I were to do a set of 8, then by the time that, like, I get like, I guess it would be sort of the 6th, 7th, and 8th rep would be there, but I'm not getting any more. Right? Just no way. Right. On the other hand, if I'm shooting for the sky in terms of reps, right, and going for 15, then who knows? Maybe if I'm feeling strong, I can get 18. Maybe I can get 20. I just don't know, and it just depends on like how that day is going, and that can be a result of like how the previous night's sleep has been, how the nutrition has been up to that point, et cetera, et cetera. Whether the markets have been kind or not, all that sort of stuff, right? I think this makes me think of, I can summarize this discussion very simply in that you and I have very different approaches to what we do in the gym. What's most important is those effective reps, and how you and I find those effective reps in our training is different. But we find those reps that matter for us, and that's the most important part. We just approach it differently, locate them differently, fire them differently, but it's all about those reps. However you get to them, that's what's important. And loving the way you train.
Which focuses you on that point, that mission that you have to get that effective workload in, and feel good about it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, great talk, Craig. This is fun.
Very interesting.
Okay. And yeah, you take care of yourself, and we'll check in again next time and see how you're doing. And yeah, hope everybody enjoyed this talk. If you have any questions or comments, please do let us know, because we do enjoy talking about this stuff. All right.
All right. Thanks. Cheers.